Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Anthony, and welcome back to Let Me Be Frank. This is episode 29, and we're just going to go right into Phone a Friend. Quick thought before the Phone a Friend, though, I like to share this little disclaimer that some things that are said, probably later on during the frankly speaking aspect, some things that are said are opinion, and I also encourage everyone to also do their own research and not just follow me like I'm some Bible or dictionary or whatever. So, today we have a very special guest. He is the host of the Composer Chronicles and he's founder of Alexandria Media. We have Stephen Trygar. Hey, Stephen, how's it going?
Hello.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
I was gonna say super swell. It was so easy for us to begin. Long story short, guys, I'm an idiot, and I don't know. We just it was a long. I know people aren't gonna understand what we went through, but it in like long story short, it's my fault why we had all these technical difficulties, but now we're here. And yeah, so Stephen, for anyone that doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? The way I like to word it too is if you were a novel, what would the back of your book say?
Oh, wording it like a novel. Um, well, I'll say that I was born in a country town in northeastern Pennsylvania. Uh, and uh, wow, I'm a writer, and I don't even know how. Um,
You're like, damn, what's my book?
what's my book?
Well,
Yeah.
just yeah, tell us a little bit, yeah, just about yourself.
Uh,
You were born.
I was born on in September of 1993.
Nice.
Um, and then, yeah, so I was born in a small town of Lake Ariel, uh, where the arts were really not very prominent. So I grew up in this town where I learned that very quickly that I was going to have to make a path for myself. And when I got to high school, I realized that music was the direction that I wanted to go in. And so when that came around, I was in high school figuring out my career. And the only thing that I knew is that musicians in the area were music teachers as well. The only musicians that I knew were teachers. And so I went and I became a music teacher for a while. Uh, and then when I graduated from my undergrad, I moved to Atlanta, realized that there was so much more to music than just teaching, and I applied for grad schools and became a music historian, a musicologist, or as I like to properly term it, historical musicologist, which
Which we're gonna get into that.
which is good, yeah. But uh, but yeah, so I have been since. So if you want to think about the back of my book is going from a country town as a music teacher to living in a city as a podcaster, um, and anything in between is just all filler. Just a journey to that destination.
Well,
So yeah.
yeah, so tell us a little bit about that journey and what made you want to start because your podcast is called the Composer Chronicles, which we can get into links later, and yeah, you guys should go check it out. It's called Composer Chronicles. Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about your journey to how you started this podcast and kind of like what the podcast is about?
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to start a little bit further back than
Okay.
just the year.
Yeah.
So when I was actually in my undergraduate, because I said in my introduction that I was started off as a music teacher, and when I actually got my first job as a teacher, I realized that there was absolutely nothing there for me. I I hated teaching so much, especially at that level, and at the level of high school because I was so passionate about music and the history behind the music and trying to get my students to be as passionate about music as I was. And that's just impossible because not every student is going to be the same. Some people are in bands just because they want the extra credit. Some people are there just because they want to have fun. And so me as a teacher was by the end of my first week, I was exhausted. So I switched my major to music performance uh, in my junior year of my undergrad. So within 1 year, I had completed an entire major that I don't. I still to this day don't know how I pulled that off.
Wow.
Luckily, I had all my gen ed stuff out of the way because I had 3 years of that behind my belt, and but the specifics of that one major I had completed in a year. Uh, and because at that point I knew that I wanted to go into music history, musicology, in my master's. So while I switched over to performance, I then uh, used that as the springboard, so that I can give myself a little bit of time to apply for my graduate work. And it was going to be a whole lot easier so that I didn't have to go through the practice exams, and I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of money on getting my certifications and that I was never going to use. So it was just a little bit of more of a practical thing rather than uh, a passionate choice. Uh, and so, yeah, I moved to Atlanta where I worked with the uh, worked for the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I had their program annotator and insider. We met a few times and chatted about how you can become a program annotator at symphony orchestras and what that would entail. And that was the biggest moment that rang a bell for me. Was, oh, I can write about music history for a living, if I wanted to, and I could reach audiences that don't necessarily know anything about the music that they're about to listen to. And so when I applied for my master's programs, I had that all in mind. I knew exactly that I want to be somebody who introduces classical music to people who either never heard of it before, or people who feel like classical music is inaccessible to them, or that it's elitist, and make it not so. Make it accessible, make it more public, make it a little bit easier to listen to. And so got my master's degree, and uh, got the piece of paper that says that I can in fact tell you what I'm telling you is correct, and how to properly research the topics that I'm talking about on my said podcast.
Yes.
And actually, before I started the podcast, I actually started that via a blog, and then it turned into a book anthology, which the book anthology is still currently being written and will continue to be written throughout my entire life because there's too much classical music to talk about. And then I started my podcast because I felt like the blog was not getting my mission across. I thought that podcasting was going to be a way better medium for me to get my message across because it's an audio format where, although at the current moment I'm struggling with getting the music that I'm talking about on the podcast, but actually recently I started being able to figure out how I can get the music that I want to talk about on my show, so that way I can play the music and allow people to learn about what I'm talking about by listening to the music as well. And so it's yeah, that's really my journey to becoming a podcaster. And since then, I am getting ready to start up a podcasting network.
Oh,
I am the producer of two upcoming podcasts that will be coming in February. So since and I started this podcast in April of 2020. And since I just things blew up, and I really found my calling in podcasting.
That's awesome. This network, is that going to be strictly classical music or
No, so as you mentioned, I am the founder of a multimedia production company, Alexandrian Media.
yeah.
Um, so Alexandrian Media is very, very small right now. It just consists of things that I produce. It includes that book anthology that I mentioned and the two podcasts that I run. I run the the Composer Chronicles, and then I also run a Patreon only podcast that is the sister podcast um of the Composer Chronicles.
So you're really busy.
So yeah, and so I'm looking to expand Alexandrian Media, and the first thing that I really want to do is to start a podcasting branch of that of that company. Uh, right now, it's I'm looking for podcasts that are really anything within culture, um, and art. So the company's slogan, I guess you would say, is art and culture for the modern era. And so that's a little bit inspired by the Maximum Fun podcasting network, but uh, I really believe in that statement where art and culture, no matter how old it is still relevant because it affects the culture that we have today. So if we look at culture of the past and culture of today simultaneously, then we'll be able to understand the cultures that we have today. So my podcasting network is not limiting itself to history or classical music. It's going to hopefully include other podcasts of uh, other history podcasts, uh, modern culture podcasts, art podcasts, really, really anything that is going to help the mission of art and culture are still very relevant to our times.
That's awesome. And
Yeah,
congrats on, yeah, doing
thank you.
that and everything you've been working on. To rewind a little bit, on because like I said, I had a lot of thoughts when you were talking with like with the whole thing with going to school for certain things. I can relate with I've changed my major quite a few times where I was going to school for music.
Oh, really?
I was in choir in high school and stuff. So then I was like, oh, I'm gonna learn piano and like really be this like badass musician. And it's like it's not that easy. It's so much easier to say that.
It is so much easier to say that. It's not easy.
Because at the end of the day, and like you said, how, because I can relate too about not being, working a certain job and not being 100% happy in it, or not
Mhm.
even being 50% happy in it sometimes. And because, especially with the whole thing with music, it's not like usually people are like striving to be this rock star, this pop star, like something famous or something well known. No one is usually like, I want to be a music teacher. Like, that's not like their main
Right.
aspiration. And there's nothing wrong with being a music
No.
teacher at
Yeah.
all either. But like you said, I think like you need the passion for it. And
Yeah.
if you don't have that passion, it's
Mhm.
definitely, like work's not gonna, I mean, obviously work is work, but work should be at least a little bit enjoyable or fun. You should
Yeah.
kind of want to do what you're doing because
Yeah.
it's your life. And we are, sometimes it's hard to feel this way, especially during this time, but sometimes we feel like we're out of control of our life, but we
Right.
definitely have a lot more control than we might think.
Right. And I would like to rewind myself and say that this, not to say that music teachers don't have the passion. I just
Yeah.
didn't have the passion for teaching students who are not interested.
Yes. Yeah.
My passion is placed elsewhere. So I don't mean to sound like I'm saying that music teachers don't have passion, because it certainly
Uh,
takes a different kind of passion to teach K through 12 music.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think you came off that way. I think some people though, and I'm gonna get to another assumption in a second, but I think some people assume that being a teacher is almost like this fallback career, and it's not. Like a lot of people want to
Yeah,
actually become teachers, but it's looked
yeah,
at as like this. I don't know. Teachers should get paid way fucking more than they do as
yeah,
it is, especially during this crisis. Oh my god.
yeah. I know.
But
Yeah, I certainly understand because my family believes that teaching is a fallback career, where they say to me all the time, "Oh, all you have to do is just finish off your credits and go and you can fall back on that." And it's like, I'll be so miserable."
yeah.
Yeah, but you know, uh, but yeah, it's definitely a different passion that I certainly don't have. Although I do teach in different ways, just not in a classroom setting.
And that's a good yeah, and that's a really good point too. I feel like too people probably assume I don't really know many fans of, at least in my personal circles, I don't hear people talking about classical music. I
Mhm,
honestly feel like people don't even realize classical music is still being created. Like they
mhm.
will just assume that, oh yeah, like I guess I like Bach or something. Like they'll think way into the past. So your podcast really I really enjoy that it highlights these musicians that are, doing classical music because it's still a thing.
Yeah,
Or some people will confuse it with like Christian music. It's like, no, there's so
yeah,
many different things.
yeah, yeah. I do my best to include both historical composers as well as living ones, and
Yes.
not just composers as well. My podcast also tries to look at music from the listener's point of view, looking at the composer's music. For example, um, I have two mini series within the podcast. One called Movie Night, where we talk about movie music, and another one called Gameplay, where we talk about video game music. And most people don't consider movie music and video game music to be within the classical music genre,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
are, because they were so heavily influenced by the music of their past. I mean, every music, all music we have now is influenced by the music of our past.
Yeah.
Um, but the reason why I don't include music like pop music is because then I start to blur the lines of who's a songwriter and who's a composer. So, which is I would love to eventually talk about like pop music, but that would start to get a little bit dicey with the content of my podcast.
Yeah.
So, but even then, like you said, and just other musicians. One of the episodes was my brother, where we talked about just classical music used in films, that pre-existing historical stuff. Um, and then another episode was me talking to my fiance about video game music, specifically Final Fantasy X, and how
Love
uh,
that game.
Nobuo Uematsu drew in, and the other two composers of that score drew from Stravinsky and Debussy and Ravel to create their score for Final Fantasy X. So it's all still very relevant, even though you don't really know. Even though if you like, if you think, oh, this video game score, I love this score, but it can't possibly be classical music. Well, it has roots in it, so you technically could call it classical music. Um,
Definitely.
but yeah, so I like to try and bring on living composers, not just classical music. I try to distinguish to separate them by calling them uh, concert composers, people who create music specifically for stage use, um, and then media composers, video games, commercials, uh, movies, etc. So I try to include all of those composers to make sure that um that we see that the arc from history and our modern era are talking to each other. They always have and they always will. Um so yeah.
I mean, it makes sense too why Final Fantasy X has such beautiful music, and
Hmm.
it makes a lot more sense to me now because last year in my area, I don't remember. I think it was a different Final Fantasy, but there was a symphony for Final Fantasy music, so
Yeah.
it made so now that you're explaining this out, it's like, oh, that actually does make sense,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
I know that Square Enix does allow the Final Fantasy stuff to um, all Final Fantasy music to be performed on concert stage. There's actually, I can't remember the name of the event, but there is an event every year where they put on a concert of just music from Final Fantasy X, and it's
hmm.
interesting.
No, it's cool. I definitely want to go whenever this is all over, if it's ever over. um,
Let's hope.
you so you told me that and you mentioned it too. You just mentioned it on the podcast that you're a historical musicologist. Can
Yeah,
you delve more into I remember reading that and thinking, what is that? Can you
yeah,
delve a little bit more into that?
yeah. So uh, musicology itself is the study of music, and it could be separated into two parties. You can think um, you could be on the historical side, which is where I am, and then you can also be on the theoretical side. Um, but at the same time, so I like to call myself a historical musicologist. It is a term that exists beyond my own beyond my own mind. Um, but I like to call myself a historical musicologist because I do focus on the history of music and how we got the music we have today, and focusing on how the composers their personal lives affected their creations. Um, but I also like to continue to have the musicologist portion on my title because I do also look at the theory as well. I also try to see how the theory was influenced by the composer's life at their time. Did they use a particular chord progression because of something, um because of a particular emotion that they were feeling? Is there a specific timbre that they use, and a lot of those things. Um while I remain within music history, I call myself a historical musicologist because I still do like to focus on the theory as well. Um, but for those who don't know what music theory is, it's just the breakdown of of what music is. It's the learning about the notation and what a certain thing is. Like, what is an F note on a staff, or what kind of chord is being played, or so on and so forth. So that is
I took a little music theory towards the end of my high school years, and yeah, it was
mm,
cool because being part of choir was one thing to just read the sheet music or like mostly read the words, but then to actually start learning, I wish I could remember as much as I used to know, but to
yeah.
really start knowing what those notes were, it was
Mhm,
really cool to read it that way. It was like
yeah.
another language.
Oh, I know. It is. That's what it is. It's learning the intricacies of another language. So if you're somebody who's learning a language, music theory is literally learning the language of a music, learning its grammar, learning its literature, and so on and so forth. Because um, you can read it. It's like learning it's like your native language. You already know something, but do you really know why it's that way? So for most of the people who are listening to this podcast, English is our probably our first language. Uh, but do we really understand why we say the things we say in a particular order? How does a sentence structured? Um, so musicians who know how to read music sometimes have a hard time with theory because it's it's a whole different, really digging into the intricacies of the musical language.
Yeah. Um, I like to ask this next question. I started asking it for this season because I think about my own journey and how much I've grown, and in general, just people. There's always certain things that happen in life that help us grow
Yeah.
more and more. So, what is one of your biggest failures, and what did you learn from it?
Hmm. Now, are we talking professionally or personally?
Whichever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. Well, so it's I can't really consider it to be a failure,
Okay.
but coming out as a gay man was the biggest mistake that I made. But it was a happy mistake. Um, I lost a lot of people. I lost a lot of people in my life, and uh, but the reason why it's a happy mistake is because it has made me who I am. It has pushed me to be uh, the person that I am. I would not have the perseverance that I have in starting up my own company and figuring it out what that means to me if I didn't have that self-reliance that was created because of what happened. Um, so I it's weird because I think about that a lot. When I read your question, I thought to myself, "Oh, that's that's so hard because it's not really a failure."
No, yeah.
Um, the only reason why I really call it a failure is because it was just the the wrong time, but not really the wrong time. Um,
Well,
there was a lot that I did at the time that I took it back and tried to play it off as something else, and uh,
oh, that's interesting.
um, so that's really why I consider it a failure, is because I didn't go about it the right way. But at the same time, it still it still was a benefit in some way. Failures are really important for us as humans to and you can't dawdle on them. You have to learn from them and grow.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, was it because of the response of you coming out? Like, because maybe it was more negative? Like, was that why I kind of felt maybe that way at first, but then like you said, you persevered and grew?
Yeah, I think why it feels like a failure is because I lost so many people in my life.
Mhm.
I I grew up in a very religious family, and although I don't consider myself to be religious. I still consider myself to be a very spiritual person. Um, but because I was in a religious family, that was pretty much all I really knew. And so when I went to college, I went to a private Catholic university, where everybody still had the same mind frame of everybody that I knew growing up. Um, I didn't actually know what gay meant until I was a senior in high school.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and
See,
because nobody talked about it.
I was 7th grade and I thought that was too late.
Yeah. I mean, I was a kid in 6th grade feeling like, why do I feel like this? Who else feels like this? But I never talked about it because if I ever talked about it, people would think, "What are you talking about?" Like, that's because nobody would have known in 6th grade because all of us would not have known. Nobody in my hometown talked about it. Um, and I remember when I was a junior in high school that somebody called me gay for the first time. They're like, "You've got to be gay." And I'm like, "Uh, I I
What is
don't know what you mean.
that?
What do you mean?" um, and so yeah, and because of that, uh, when I actually came out, I came out to my parents first, um, and their response was a bit neutral, um, and then it went down, and went down from there. And because it was so neutral, I was like, oh, I guess that was a positive thing. And so I went to my friends literally the next day. And I started telling people, and that was when all hell broke loose. People started, actually, nearly got impeached from my own club. I was the president of a music education club, and I nearly got impeached from it because I was unfit to be a music teacher because I could influence the kids. Um, but that was the viewpoint of my own peers. Um, of course, the advisor of the club was like, "This is bullshit. Knock it off." Um, but I was already viewed so negatively that I had to step down, um, even though they tried to impeach me and it failed. I still had to step down because it was obvious that nobody in my own club was respecting me in any way. And as the president of that club, it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard when nobody respects you. Um, and and because all of my friends were in said club, those were the only friends that I had because we spent every moment in school together. And so I had to go to therapy quite a bit. I remember at one point around the same time that they started to try and impeach me, I was in the office every day for 2 weeks straight. Um, so yeah, so that's why I feel like it was a failure because I lost so much. I lost respect from a lot of people, and but it's not really a failure because it made me who I am, and it gave me the drive, it gave me the perseverance that I have now.
I think honestly, I think people who couldn't try to understand you, I think they failed.
Yeah,
I don't think you failed at
yeah,
all with that. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that and you had to go through all this loss. At the same time, I can assume that you have gained a
mhm,
lot now throughout life.
I have.
Because I was gonna say I saw you were what, engaged or
Oh
married?
yeah, I am engaged. Yeah,
Engaged. Congrats.
thank you.
So I it sucks when you have to go through those really difficult times,
Hmm.
and then it's one of those things where it's like you just gotta finally step over that wall because
Hmm.
there is a green pasture, a long green
Yeah,
pasture
there
on the
is.
other side. But it's like how the fuck do I get over that wall?
Yeah, and it feels like an impossible wall at
Yeah.
times. Sometimes that wall seems like it's 20 stories high, and you're only 2 feet tall, and uh, and there's no possible way around it. But the problem is that most people look up. They look up and see that it's impossible to look around. But maybe if you take a left or a right, maybe the wall ends somewhere and you can just walk around the wall. And you have to take the long way around, but you can get around the wall somehow.
Yeah. I was gonna say I look up because I'm like, damn, there's an airplane going by. It's so loud. um
Damn
to
airplane.
to wrap this up, to wrap
Mhm.
up Phone a Friend, what are your best links to follow you on social media or any other outlets?
Um so I don't really do a whole lot on my personal Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. So the
Okay.
best places to follow me are on the Composer Chronicles' Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, which on all three of them are Chron Podcast. So
Okay.
CHRON Podcast. Um, those are the best places to find them, and uh, on each of them, you can click on the links in the bio, and it'll take you right to everywhere that I everything that I do. Um, so yeah, those are the best places to find me. I mean, my podcast is on so many platforms. Uh, so yeah, I think those are the best places to go look for me: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to do, frankly speaking, on one specific topic today, just because I don't know if we're going to have enough time for any other topics. There's also no questions this week for Fishbowl. So I guess we can delve a little bit into this. And I figured since we had Steven on the podcast talking about some music, I figured might as well focus on something music related. And look at that. Taylor Swift has a new album called Evermore. It was released December 11th, 2020. So very recently. And to be honest, I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan. I feel like if anything, I liked her country music before. Like I thought that was pretty decent or whatever. And then when she got into this whole pop era thing, I was like, I don't know. It just sounds to me, it just sounds very generic compared to what I think she might be capable of. Fortunately for she came out with another album not too much before Evermore called Folklore, and I think she's kind of trying to tread back to maybe some country. There's some country elements a little bit throughout this album, but she's going in some alternative indie way. So I'm going to review her newest album. I'm going in as open-minded as I can. Well, besides actually I listened to all the songs prior to this to kind of give some notes on that, and I'm trying to judge it mostly just off of her music and not necessarily who she is as a person, because I feel like then there's going to be some bias in there, and I really just want to judge the music that I listen to and the lyrics that I looked at. Hence, if you're watching the video version, you see there's a laptop on my lap. That's because I want to go through some of the lyrics, and I can pop up the lyrics on here for each of the songs. So yeah, before I get into the songs too, I noticed with this album, I mean, I've listened to some of her past stuff. I don't know if she's been doing this a lot, but I felt like she was almost trying to be edgy and was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna swear" and stuff more. Because I feel like almost all the songs have some sort of swearing in them, which was a little, I found that to be a little bit interesting. But that was a general thing that I first thought of, because like shit would come up and damn. I think one of the songs is called "Tis the Damn Season." Like she was saying shit a lot in songs, I think, and I'm trying to remember other ones. We'll probably get to there. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's people who try to be edgy, and then there's people who are actually edgy, and I was starting to feel like she's just trying to be edgy in some weird way, that almost a little bit forced, I guess. So we're gonna go into the first song, which is called "Willow," which was on Spotify was the most popular song. So I figure if a song, the most popular one, should be probably one of the best ones on the album. I I guess. I mean, I find the song to be a little bit catchy. Like I said before, it's kind of has this like folklore theme to it. I guess you could call it a little woodsy theme that the song has to it. I just personally don't think the song's that deep whatsoever. Like some of the I mean, some of the lyrics are okay, but then some of them I'm like, okay. For example, some lyrics that I found that were pretty good was, "And if it was an open shut case, I never would have known from that look on your face, lost in your current like a priceless wine." The "lost in your current like a priceless wine," I feel like it's actually a pretty clever lyric. But then you have lyrics that, so for example, the chorus is, "The more that you say, the less I know. Wherever you stray, I follow." It's just so basic to me. Like for someone that has, I think they said this is her ninth album, it's just like, come on. Like, and especially if this was a leading track you wanted, you could have, I think, got a little bit deeper. "Wreck my plans, that's my man." Like I don't know, I don't think this wasn't my favorite single, but with some of the other ones I listened to, I guess you could say it's one of the better ones. I'm gonna try not to be super brutal, but like I said, when I was listening to the beginning of this album, I thought, okay, this might actually be pretty good. Which, moving on to the second one. So the second song is called "Champagne Problems." This was the second most popular song on the album on Spotify. This actually was my favorite one out of all of them if I had to choose. Some things that I liked about some of the lyrics I thought were pretty good, and some of them once again were a little like I just felt like not her best work. I mean, to be honest, I just I'm trying not to really like rip her a new asshole or anything, but I just feel like I think about other artists in the industry, and I just think about all of the people who sing and who make music that are so underrated. I think about all those people, and I just kind of think about like why is Taylor Swift a famous singer? I just don't find, like, vocally, I don't think she's super strong. I'm not trying to be mean or like attack her or whatever. It's just more like I think it's just a criticism, and it's my opinion that I don't think, especially listening to this album, you notice she's very just low, almost low talking through the album, and there's not really a lot of like, I don't know, like melody or just, I don't know, like singing in her voice. Like a lot of it did sound like she was talking, which I didn't love. The composers for the music, I thought did a great job. I think her first name's Yuki, who played violin on the background of her songs, and the composer, what's his name? He is Aaron Dessner. So Aaron Dessner on worked on pretty much every single song, whether it was the background music or even some of the lyrics. I feel like he did a really good job with what he worked with on here. The lyrics, and I just don't find her, I think she's always spoken very highly and very praised as being this like amazing lyricist, and I just don't see it personally compared to other artists. um if I wanted to give examples, I think like Adele, Alanis Morissette, Amy Lee from Evanescence, those are artists that really hit closer to home. I could even say Demi Lovato is even a choice, that there's just certain lines they write that are very powerful and that can actually affect you emotionally. And personally, for me, Taylor Swift just doesn't do that, unfortunately. But I will admit, with Champagne Problems, the story behind this song I thought was very interesting. So I got a lot of backstories on her songs from Genius, and it was talking about how this song specifically, it tells the story of a woman who shocks her would-be fiance and their loved ones by turning down a marriage proposal right before Christmas. So I yeah, I mean, I felt like with some of her songs, at least there was some decent story ideas that she chose to go with. Think that I just don't think the lyrics were super strong, unfortunately. But Champagne Problems probably was one of my favorite ones. I thought it was catchy for the most part compared to some of these other ones that I'm going to get into. All right, so the third single is called Gold Rush, and Gold Rush, I think it was the third most popular song or something. I think that's just kind of how it goes. I thought it was pretty stupid. I thought it was a really stupid song in general. It's about jealousy or something. I noticed too with a lot of Taylor Swift music that she always constantly has to write about romance and love and exes and being jealous of love and romance and exes. And it's like, change it up a little bit. And she once again doesn't really do that on this album. Like I said, I've listened to some of her stuff in the past. I'm not like this ultra super fan that drank the Kool-Aid and that's like obsessed with every single song she has. I just noticed like she writes about the same things, it seems. And I guess with 2020, one thing I always think about, because I aspiring writer myself, that I always think in order to write, you have to have experience. And I don't mean like writing experience, but you have to experience life itself. And with 2020, we couldn't really do that with COVID and being locked in. And she obviously was probably locked in and wasn't really having as many experiences as she has in the past. So I think maybe that's why she felt like she had to pull certain stories from things, or why she just kind of wrote about the similar same things again. I don't know if she's always doing that, but to me that just gets really boring over time. During verse 1 of Gold Rush, I I literally LOL'd when I heard the first verse. What must it be like to grow up that beautiful with your hair falling into place like dominoes? That not the best simile in my opinion. I see me padding across your wooden floors with my Eagles t-shirt hanging from the door. Okay, no one cares that you're an Eagles fan. Eagles are trash. They're out of the season. I know I can't really talk that much for myself because my team, the Patriots, are also out of the season, but I really laughed when I heard, because I was like, why is she mentioning the Eagles football team? Why is she saying hair falling into place like dominoes? Like there were so many other similes, I think, one could have came up with. I don't know, they're very silly things. I'm trying to be nice. I'm really trying to be nice. Hmm. I'm like, do I say it? Because it's like you never know who you're gonna meet in the future, or you never know. Yeah, you just never know where your life's gonna go. I don't want to like bash or anything. And once again, I stress this really is opinion. She reminds me of how I wrote stuff in high school, how it was a little bit, how it was just very, it's almost like this whiny high school. Oh my god, I'm so sad because love. I'm so sad because I don't have love. I'm jealous of love. I had my heart broken. Like, I don't know. Like, I know I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of her fans at me, but it's just basic, 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 basic. Okay, so the next song is "'Tis the Damn Season." I was like, we got a Christmas banger on this bitch. No, so this song, I wrote overall, but I also wrote that I thought there were some good lyrics. So "'Tis the Season" is about, I want to say it's about her going back home or something, and shocker, it's about love. She runs into someone she used to love, I think, in her hometown. And yeah, and there's some, like I said, there's some pretty decent lyrics. The holidays linger like bad perfume. I thought that's a pretty clever line. I like that. And the road not taken looks real good right now, and it always leads to you in my hometown. I thought that was okay, like pretty good in there. She says a lot though, and the road not taken looks real good now. Another pet peeve of mine is when an artist constantly, and I'll probably mention this in some of the other songs on this album, I hate when the same line is repeated over and over and over again throughout half the song. And I feel like the line "and the road not taken looks real good now." I felt like that was a line that she really liked, even though it's a complete ripoff of Robert Frost. But I felt like she was like, "Ooh, I fucking love that. Let's say it about 12 more times throughout the song." I didn't count, but it's at least 6 times that gets said. 8 times. Oh, wait, 9, 10. I think about 10 times that line is said. And it's just like, okay, yeah, it's a good line, but we don't need to. I don't know. I guess a lot of artists kind of do that, where they'll repeat that good line, and it is a line in the chorus, so I guess, whatever. But it's said throughout the entire song, which just kind of like ruins it for me. Damn. Okay, so "Tolerate It" is the fifth single. Now, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of hers, so I didn't know this was like a thing she did, but apparently her most vulnerable song is always number 5. Apparently, that's what it says on some fan sites and on Genius. I thought that idea is actually very clever and interesting. And also, I was kind of excited to listen to the single because I figured, okay, like I'm gonna cry, or like this is gonna be emotional. Like this should be a tearjerker. Or you should, even if I don't feel something, or even if it doesn't feel relatable to me, I should feel something from this song. And this song is about, it says that it's about a continuous struggle of wanting love from someone who isn't even paying attention to anything you do for them, which is actually something I could fucking relate to, on a personal level. However, when I listened to the song, I felt absolutely nothing with it. And this song going on to almost the rest of them that I can probably gloss over kind of quickly, it just was really starting to go downhill from number 5 to like almost the last one, if not the second to last one, because there's 15 songs. I'm like, what is this really? Like I was expecting this really touching song, this really good song, and I just really didn't feel it. There's some lyrics: "I wait by the door like I'm just a kid, use my best colors for your portrait, and watch you tolerate it. If it's all in my head, tell me now. Tell me I've got it wrong somehow. I know my love should be celebrated, but you tolerate it." Like, I don't know. I did not feel it. When I was listening to it, I was like, wow, I don't feel a goddamn thing on this song. All right, so "No Body, No Crime" featuring Haim. I want to say they're a girl group. I'm not really a fan of theirs either, so I don't really know their music. There was a little bit of country to this single. I thought it was a little bit, or at least the chorus I thought was catchy. The story behind the song I also found interesting because it kind of has this true crime story background to it. I think it's kind of almost like a murder happens, but like someone's getting away with it type song. So I thought like the story behind, like the idea behind the song was good. And there was a little bit of country on it, a little country twang on it. And I feel like she really should go back towards her country roots in my opinion. I think that's where her peak was, which obviously she's had tons of success in the pop era. I don't feel shit when she does pop, in my opinion, when I've heard some of her big singles. It's just like, shake it off. Like, you gotta have bad blood. Very generic, poppy. She just almost becomes a little bit too generic for my taste. So with Nobody No Crime, the lyrics were a little bland. I wrote, but I did think the concept was interesting, and I thought the feature really didn't do much to it. Haim, there's a couple. I forgot which one's the singer in Haim, but they're really like the song could have happened without Haim being in it. No offense, it just yeah. I'm gonna not even do the lyrics of the next few of them, I want to say, because, like I said, going on after this, I really was losing hope. I was falling asleep, or I was just dying. So the next single is Happiness. And all I have to say about that is it is a very bland song. I want to say it's disappointing because I guess that single was really supposed to be about like her mental health and stuff. It just was so fucking bland. There's next song was Dorothea. I just wrote oh no. And I did like this oh thing because half the song is just her going oh oh. And I wanted so it also said too on Genius that Dorothea was the very first single she wrote for this album, and I could see why. I just absolutely hated this single. There was nothing really to it for me. I remember not liking any of the lyrics. The way she was trying to sing was almost like wailing. I personally just did not love that. The next song, Coney Island, featuring The National. Oh my God. I put a lot of LOLs with this song. I figured with featured guests, that the songs would be pretty decent. So the singer of The National, his name is Matt Berninger, Berninger. Like I said, personal opinion. I think he has a terrible fucking voice. I remember when he started singing in the song, it was like ha, ha and I busted laughing, and then I was just crying in like disbelief of just why, obviously the song, it's called Coney Island, so obviously you kind of know what it's about, but it was not a duet. It was like a duet from hell to me, so I did not enjoy that one as well. Ivy is the next single. All I really have to say about that there were some clever lyrics. So I wanted to pull up for Ivy some lyrics that I found to be pretty good, pretty interesting. I guess not just pretty good, I thought they were good lyrics. So I'd meet you where the spirit meets the bones in a faith forgotten land. I was like, those are some good lyrics. There was also my pain fits in the palm of your freezing hand, taking mine, but it's promised to another. Oh, I can't. Like I will admit with Ivy, I didn't really like the song itself or how she sung the song, but I thought the lyrics were pretty strong with that. I felt like it kind of painted some good imagery there with that. Cowboy Like Me is the next song, and it is my absolute least favorite song. This song I actually started falling asleep while I was listening to it, but I also kind of laughed because the first two lyrics of the song was very hilarious to me. It was almost like she didn't so if anyone that plays tennis, there's obviously tennis courts, and then they cover the nets with like this, I would call it a tarp, but I feel like she didn't know what the actual name for that was, or could even guess what it was, or even say it was a tarp. So the lyrics go, and the tennis court was covered up with some tent like thing. I just thought it was the laziest written song on the entire album, and just not good. Not good. Long story short is the next song. All I wrote for that one was yuck. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to hate. It just was really going downhill. at this point, except for maybe the last song, which I'll get into later, obviously. But I'm trying to remember what this one's even about. This one is about this one's about Kanye West, and it's like, girl, like, come on. Like, it happened so many years ago, and I'm not trying to justify like painful experiences, like, oh, you need to get over them in a certain amount of time or anything, but it's like she was still dwelling on this rivalry with him, and I guess she might have found some closure with him on it, but it was just a stupid song in my opinion. It was so useless. This next song called Mortuary, I really need to be careful about talking about because she did write it about her grandmother. Unfortunately, all I had to say about it was that very basic lyrics. Um yeah, like I said, I'm really trying to be careful with this one, but at the same time, I think about, well, I also thought too, with her grandmother, I thought her grandmother had passed away maybe recently, but I guess she passed away in 2003, and it did kind of make me a little bit curious on why there wasn't a single about her sooner. But just honestly, in my opinion, I feel like, my grandma has passed away and we were very close. I feel like if I were to write a song about my grandmother, especially who isn't alive anymore, it's going to be really powerful. It's going to be a tearjerker. It's going to really hit home, and it just didn't. I felt like the song could have been written better. Personally, I felt like I didn't really feel anything, and it's something, once again, I could really relate to, and I just couldn't because she's the one that wrote it and sung it, unfortunately. So then the next song, this is the 14th one out of the 15. We're almost at the home stretch here. Closure, I wrote Just Stop. Because at this point, this song, in long story short, it was like, why? Like, why are we writing the same types of songs over and over again? Closure is about an ex, and what the lyrics were and what it was kind of saying it was about, I bet I can guess which ex the song is about. And it's like, come on. Like, it's a once again, come on. Like, why are we rehashing these certain things? I think maybe, like I said, there just weren't a lot of life experiences that happened this year for many of us. Maybe that's why it's like we had to revisit certain things. But I guess it's like about her saying, like, I'm fine, pretty much. Like, you were checking in on me and I said I'm fucking fine, bitch. Like, that's what it is. And I just, once again, it really didn't like motivate me or make me feel stronger. It just was eh. Okay, last song is called Evermore, which is the name of the album. She saved that for the very last song. It's featuring Bon Iver. They had done songs like Skinny Love, and they're talented. I'm not saying she's not necessarily, or I'm not trying to say she's not talented, but what I will say is with Evermore, so this was a 5-minute song, and I got really nervous because of all the singles I was listening to beforehand. I'm like, oh no, like, I don't know if I want to listen to this anymore. Like, just make it stop, make it end, please. Because I really tried to give it a shot, and I really was just not loving this album for the most part. However, Justin Vernon, who sings for Bon Iver, he fucking saves this song. I want to say it's verse 2. There's a part where Taylor Swift and Justin Vernon go back and forth with lyrics. One, he has a great voice. Two, it's just like magical. The parts that the lyrics that he wrote and his parts in that song, I'm like, it's a song, it would almost make me want to add it to one of my playlists. And same thing with Champagne Problems. It's a song I would maybe add. Besides that, though, I like, if I had to rate this album out of 5 stars, I would rate it 2.5 stars, no more than 3. I would not go more than 3. I guess I would say 2.5. Justin Vernon would maybe boost it up to a 3 for me. Because like I said, that Evermore and Champagne Problems and Evermore are 2 singles I would check out, but honestly I would only check out Evermore for Justin's part. And Champagne Problems, like I said, I thought it was pretty good. I get why that song is popular. The rest of them, I really just don't understand why. Maybe Willow. I kind of see some good in Willow to like, okay. But yeah, I just felt like this was kind of like an angsty high school ish type lyric writing, which is strange because I felt like this was a really serious project for her, that she wanted to really bring in mental illness into these songs. And I felt like she just kind of copy and pasted some of her old stuff, but with a different genre. But that is going to be the end of today's show. I want to thank Stephen Trygar so much for being a guest on today's episode. And also make sure, guys, to check out the Composer Chronicles podcast that he hosts, and also check out anything that he makes through Alexandria Media. I want to thank today's sponsor for sponsoring the video. I want to thank my producer, Monica Leigh. I want to thank John Moon, who does the intro and outro music for season 3. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, for watching, for supporting. It means so much to me. If you would like to become a producer or executive producer, make sure you check out my Patreon link below in either description for YouTube or streaming service that you're listening to. Also, I have some new merch. I have a super special awesome day t-shirt that's out, and I redid the logo for Let Me Be Frank on merch, so that should be super exciting, and I'm excited. Also, some of the proceeds are going to be donated, so you can look more into that on some of my past posts. I'll probably do another post really soon around the time of this video. So I hope you guys have a super special awesome day, and bye.